Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a look with the Nomad Verona palette, which is was their Valentine palette. It is Romeo and Juliet themed, so you have the love side and the death side. I think we're going to be focusing more on the death side. I did a haul video recently and I showed a bunch of palettes. This palette was requested by a couple of you to use focusing on the death side, so we're going to do that today. So if that sounds interesting, stick around, make sure you're subscribed, and we're going to jump into it. Okay, I do have a new primer to use, but because it's been a while since I've used a Nomad palette, I'm going to use the Gerard Clean Canvas. This is normally what I use. I'm in the shade Fair. They sell this in a couple of shades and white. I do have I'm low on this. I do have a backup. I ordered a new one during the holidays because they were doing a sale. So I do have another one of these. This is a very wet base, so you're going to get a lot of pigment, concentrated pigment. However, it can take longer to blend. So just if you use a wet base and you don't set it, you're going to get better longevity, but blending can be an issue. So just keep that in mind. I do have a new eyeshadow primer, which I'm not going to use again because I have not used their palettes in a very long time. I'm going to go with an eye base that I'm familiar with. That way, if I run into issues, I know it's the palette and not the primer, if that makes sense. I wanted to come on here really quickly just to show the palette one more time. I was watching Teresa is Dead's review of this, and she compared the death side to the Venus Immortalis palette because people had a hard time with this palette. I do own that, so I figured I would show it, and it is a very similar like vibe. I never had issues with mine. I did see a bunch of negative. Some people had issues with the mattes. Again, I've never had issues with mine. I got this on sale at Ulta, and then I had like a $10 coupon, so I ended up like getting this palette for free, but I figured I would show it because it does give you similar color vibes. So if you liked that palette, I don't know if that one's even available anymore. You can totally get similar color story with this one, and then you have the other side too, so I figured I would show that. But yeah, I'm gonna go put the primer on and do one side off camera, and then we'll come back and do the other eye together. Okay, so this is what I came up with. I used all shades from the death side except for one. I used the lightest pink just to blend a little bit up in here, but I don't think you would know that I used a pink. I think it looks pretty, pulls a little more lavender just because I put it on top of purples. So we're gonna recreate what I just did, or as I like to say, let's see if we can get them to match, because that's a common problem where when I film the other eye, the first eye looks darker or the second eye looks darker. They don't look tonally the same, but that happens a lot. It's hard when you are not doing them at the exact same time. Normally when an average person does their makeup, they're doing the eyes together, so that's not going to be an issue for the average person. I'm just going to go in with the primer. I figured I would do that part on camera. I apply it with a brush just because it's easier with my nails to get my finger in there, and because this is such a wet primer, a little bit goes a long way, so I generally pull it out of the cap. So I figured I would show me using it. You can use concealer and you will get a similar effect. You don't have to buy that particular one. MAC Paint Pot is good. It's going to be a little bit drier, so if you want something that's going to grab but not maybe be as wet, I would recommend the MAC Paint Pot. It is pricey, but you can get it at Ulta sometimes on a deal. I think it's worth the money. I've run out of it. I don't have that one anymore. So we're going to go in with the black, and then I'm going to go in with a little bit of this burgundy and dusty lilac shade, I guess would be the best way to describe it. This palette's a little awkward with the flaps, so I'm not going to hold it up every single time just because it's going to take forever. I do have a color switch. I'm pretty much using just an E25 from Sigma for the whole eye look. I have two of these. They're both dirty. My eye brushes are always dirty. I don't clean those as often as I do my face brushes. I'm going straight in with the black, just in the outer corner. It is very powdery, and I'm not dipping in very hard, but that's why I tapped off initially. Normally I don't do that just because I don't feel like I need to, but I don't want to get a ton of fallout. This black is interesting. I feel like it's got a little bit of a purple undertone, which makes sense being on the side that it's on with the shades that are surrounding it. It's grays and a blue and a purple, so some of it could be because my brush is not clean either. I do color switch in between, so I think it's too bad, but I'm just going around the edge just a little bit. Then we're going to go in with dark. The black shade was Death. It's the only black in the palette, but we're going to go in with dark, which is the burgundy shade. And I'm going to take that. I didn't go in with this initially. I went in with Dagger, which is the dusty, like lilac-y shade, but I ended up having to pull this in a little bit to help with the blend of the black. So we're going to do this part first. Okay, and then I'm going to take Dagger, which is the dusty, I don't know how else to describe it other than a dusty lilac, which doesn't sound very pretty, but I think all of the shades that I've used, I think I didn't use the dark gray, but I use every other shade on this side. Now, if you follow Teresa is Dead, she had a hard time with this palette and didn't give it the best review. And I see two camps of people, that ones that really like Nomad's palettes and other people that don't. I think it's fine. I'm gonna say, is it like I don't think Nomad has like my perfect formula, but I don't think it's bad. I did have a little bit of issues blending out the black. Some of it's going to be the primer that I used. Like, it looked a little patchy. Not seamless. I shouldn't say patchy. That's not the right word. Maybe not as seamless. And I'm just going back and forth between the black and the burgundy just to make the edges match. Some of that is because I'm going onto a wet base. It's not always the shadows, because I can usually get most palettes to where they look relatively blended. When you use a wetter base, such as a concealer, it's going to really grab if you don't set it. You're going to get really good longevity, because I can normally get like a good 16-hour wear out of something like this. But you're going to be spending a little bit more time blending. I'm going to go back in with dark, which is that burgundy, just on the lid a little bit, just to blend this black a tiny bit. And then I'm taking what's left just on the inner part of my crease. I think that's pretty close. And then I took a tiny bit, if I can move some stuff here to show you the palette again. Paradise, which is the light pink. That's the only shade I used from the other side. Just on the top, just because there isn't anything lighter. I didn't want to go in with the gray shade in Tomb, just because I feel like it tonally would have clashed with the purples. I feel like this is light enough, and I used just a little bit that you can't really tell that I went in with a pink and not a purple. I just wanted to get that edge a little bit better. Under the brow bone, I used, this is the Alchemy palette from KVD. I wish they would bring this back because I've seen a lot of people asking for this. I'm going in with Ultraviolet, which is the purple. I used to have ABH's Moonchild palette, which pretty much looked identical to this. You had a couple more shades, but the pigmentation and the impactfulness of these was better because I found myself always reaching for this when I wanted a color highlighter versus that one, so I ended up decluttering it. But I think you can still get the Moonchild palette. I could be wrong. I don't go on ABH's website very often, so I don't know. I'm just going to go in with a flat brush. This is a Morphe brush. This brush does not exist anymore on Morphe's website. I did go on to Crown's website recently, and I was able to get two that are very, very similar. They were about $3 a piece, because Morphe used to private label from Crown before they were able to, I think, produce their own stuff. So a lot of the earlier Morphe brushes, Crown still carries. So if you're looking for something small and flat like this, go visit Crown's website. Like I said, I think they were even cheaper. I think they were like $2 a piece. And I was able to use like a discount code, so it didn't cost me very much to ship. So if you're interested, we're gonna go in with Tragedy, this like multi-chrome, and then I use a little bit of Moors in between, and then we'll go into lower lash line. I took it on a brush first, and then I went in a little bit on my finger just to smooth it out, because this is kind of a chunky, like thicker, not really chunky, but it's definitely a thicker formula, so it looked a little bit textured on my eyelids with the brush. And generally with multi-chromes, you're gonna get a better effect when you use your finger anyway. I just, with my nails, it's sometimes hard. So I got kind of a base application, and then as far as I could get it, I went back around just to give it a little bit, like I said, more impactfulness. And then I went in with Moors on my finger, which is also a pretty like duochrome gold. It's very, very thin in formula, and it doesn't appear to have much of a base color to it, so it's definitely more of a toppery shade, but I just took it kind of right there for a little bit extra color, and then also to help blend this purpley color into the black, which putting the shade dark in with the black also helped, but I figured it gave it a little bit more dimension. For lower lash, I went in with NYX. This is Deep Blue. You could do a purple too. I had a purple out first, but because I did blue on the lower lash, I decided. But because there's gold, you could definitely do a gold in the waterline too if you had that color also. I think that would look pretty. So I went in on just a chubby little, this is a Jessup brush in Poison, which is that navy blue. And I'm going to take that about 3/4. This is very pigmented, so I stop about there with it. Very, very pigmented. Okay. And then on a little, this is an Eloise. It's like a little, almost pencil-y brush, but it's a little bit fluffier than a standard pencil. And then that same flat brush, we'll go in with the flat brush first. I went in with Juliet, which is, we're gonna go into Juliet right here, and then a little bit of this gray shade in Tomb to blend out the blue. So Inferno, the gray, the darker gray, is the only shade I'm going to take Juliet on the inner corner here, and I'm also going to put another color on top of it, and I'm going to drag that in the rest of the way. This color does have a little bit of a base color to it, so I think it shows up better on the lower lash line. I was going to use this instead of the gold, but I didn't know if it would show up as well. And then I went in to the Alchemy palette and used the blue sapphire shade just on the inner corner part, just to lighten that up just a hair. If you're deeper than me, I think you could get away with the blue, and you could get away with the blue on the inner corner even if you're fairer than me. I just like my inner corners pretty light. So then we're just same little brush in with that tomb shade and just a little bit. It's super light compared to the blue, so it doesn't even show up as gray, which is good. And my eyes are pretty watery. It's been a long time since I put makeup on, and then it's been even longer since I've had my contacts in, so my eyes are pretty runny. But I'm gonna go and do liner and put my half lash on, and then I'll give you my final thought. Okay, so here are both sides done. I don't think my lashes are never in the exact same spot. Like I said, sometimes it looks like one side's darker than the other, and they'll get off camera and they look fine. It's just the way the light is washing out one side, so I'm going to leave them. If they're not even, they're not even. But here's a look at the palette. The only shade that I didn't use today is this dark one right here in Inferno. I used every other shade from the Death side along with this light pink from Paradise. The only, like, I was able to use the blue in Juliet. This Cupid shade on the Love side is pretty light, so I think that could be an inner corner, because that was my only gripe initially, was that I didn't know what I was going to use for an inner corner. But I definitely, Cupid looks deeper in the pan than it does. There is not much of a base color to it, so that's definitely workable. And then Moore's looks like a darker gold, but again, there's not much of a base color, so both of those could work as inner corners. And let me just swatch Juliet, which you can see does have more of a base color compared to the other two. So if you're wondering about inner corner shades, those I think would be good options, because like I said, they look deeper in the pan because it's condensed, and there's really not much of a base color. So far I like this palette. I didn't have, I would say, any issues more so than I do with any other palette. I do use a wet base, which I talked about earlier. So the issues with the blending is nothing that I haven't encountered. Like, it wasn't so bad that I couldn't get it blended. We'll say that. If you wanted an easier time blending, I would say go in with something a little more silicone-y. Urban Decay, Milani, the Ulta Beauty Matte Eye Primer. Those are all kind of in the same vein. Profusion makes one where it's got a little bit of a silicone-y feel with some pigment. Ofra makes one too. I do have the Tone Activator from Kaleidos. I haven't used that a ton. And then on the lid, I forgot to mention that I did go in with the NYX Glitter Glue, but I use that with every shimmer. I put that down on my lid with every shimmer. Now, you can wet your brush. I like the grip that this gives. The other one that's a pretty good gripping primer. Too Faced makes a glitter glue, but I like Alamar Cosmetics. This is like a sticky base, so I just use it as a glitter glue. I don't use it all over the lid just because it is tacky. But those are other options if you don't want to use concealer. I like the staying power. I didn't have any issues with the shimmers. The Tragedy looked a little chunky when I put it on with the brush. My eyelids are a little bit textured. When I went in with my finger kind of over on top of that, Like, I don't see any texture. Now, I did get a little bit of fallout. Nothing that's not like coming off. It doesn't look like anything stuck. So that's fine. I generally do my base first. I'm not somebody that does my eyes first. So if you are worried about fallout, I would just do your eyes first. But yeah, I did not have a bad time with this. I don't have a ton of experience with Nomad's palettes, but it works just as well as my Japanese, the pastel-y one. I can never pronounce that one, but those are the only two that I own. I have looked at the fall palette that they released last year, but I'm kind of just waiting to see what they release this autumn time. If they come out with a Halloween-y themed palette, I might pick that one up instead of the like countryside looking one. I don't know what it's called or how else to describe it, but yeah. Let me know if you want me to do another look with this. I can focus more on the pink side if anybody's interested in seeing another version. Like I said, I had requests to use this palette, specifically the death side, so this is what I came up with. Let me know what you guys thought. Let me know if you guys have picked this up. And again, if you want to see the pink side, let me know that also. Give this video a thumbs up. Again, make sure you're subscribed if you're not already, and hopefully I will see you in another video very, very soon. Bye, everybody.